Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Alpha Art Gallery's Meet the Artist series. My name is Mary Grace Bianco, and I am here with Edward Volpe, who is an exhibiting artist for the New Brunswick Art Salon Photography exhibition beginning in January. Hi, Edward. How are you today?
Hi everyone. Hi. How are you?
Okay, I'm going to jump right into the questions. So, starting off, my first question. Your photographs feature a variety of locations from Belmar Fishing Pier to the Great Beds Lighthouse. How does the history and character of each site influence your creative process?
Great question. So instead of just presenting a photo to everyone saying, "Hey, look at this lighthouse, look at this landscape," even though it's a beautiful scene, I try to give a little bit of information on what I'm capturing, whether it be, like you said, the fishing pier, just a little history behind it, to give a little bit better context. So my audience and all of my followers and all of my fans see what they're actually looking at.
Okay, great. I think this also kind of goes into the second question,
Yeah.
which is how important is historical context in your photography, and how do you integrate it into your visual narratives?
Another great question. So it's the historical purpose that the historical side is not that big of an issue, or not that big of a content when it comes to my photographs. But when I look at for locations, some of the information or some of the details or some of the background I try to incorporate is the historical side of the photographs, leading into your first question as well. So, for example, I just got done photographing Bannerman Castle yesterday, more aerial photographs. So, some interesting facts from there. It was a World War One munitions site that actually exploded in the 1920s. So a lot of people don't know about some of the sites around New Jersey, New York. So what I try to do is in my photos try to capture um, some of the information or some of the details that they may not know living in New Jersey or New York for all their lives.
Great, thanks. And you just mentioned your aerial photography. So, my next question is, a significant portion of your work involves aerial photography, like Dawn's
Mhm.
Awakening and Treasure Island.
Yes.
So, how or do these elevated perspectives change your approach to composition and storytelling?
Great. So I've been a landscaper for better part of like 20 years. Coming from wedding and events, which I stopped doing, now focusing mainly on landscapes. The going from traditional photography to aerial photography allows you to get closer to subjects or give you perspective that you don't traditionally see from traditional landscape photography. For example, Treasure Island, it's an island that's in the river, the Raritan River that's between Brielle and Point Pleasant. And a lot of people don't know that island actually exists. So only look from what I understand, most of the only locals understand that it exists. So allowing myself to capture aerial photographs, you're seeing perspectives that you traditionally don't see with traditional landscape. I know I'm saying traditional a lot, traditional landscape photography. Not only that, one vantage point is great, but another vantage point, how can I put it? You're getting multiple different vantage points using aerial. So it's a really great tool, one of many, not just considering myself just as primary aerial photographer, but it's actually another tool in my skill set.
So, a follow-up question, for aerial photography, how do you capture these images? Do you use like a drone? Is there another method?
Yes, so I have a fleet of drones from small to medium to very large, depending upon the weather and where I'm flying, whether it's a really tight area with limited takeoff or landing capabilities, and whether or not if it's going to be something I consider for my portfolio or something I just want to fly for fun to doing a scout location. There are a lot of considerations and that you have to take with aerial photography. Um, if you do it for a business purposes or for hobby, there's different certifications you have to get through the FAA. I have actually a Part 107 commercial photography license, so through the FAA. So it's like it's a dumbed down version of a pilot's license. So you have to take classes, get certified through the FAA. So the other things you have to consider is the weather, the time of day, certain areas have flight restrictions where you can't take off. You can physically, but local ordinances prevent you basically from doing it. So you have to do a lot of research. Also, the airspace too. Airspace is a big part of it. So there's different classes of airspace. So you have to read sectional charts, which is basically just maps showing you the airspace within the area that you want to fly. Mostly we're allowed to fly in Class G airspace, which is up to 400 feet above ground level. We call AGL. So you also have to take that into consideration as well. There's a great deal of planning when it comes to photographing locations with aerial photography.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
It sounds complicated.
it's very, yeah. It goes, so aerial photography is very addictive. So it can go from really fun to really intense very fast, but depending upon where you want to fly. So,
Mhm.
but the good thing is there is a really good community within New Jersey that helps everyone guide their way to show specific locations or if you have questions where you can and can't fly. So,
Oh, wow. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay, so my next question. Many of your works, such as The Bayshore and The Reservoir, evoke a sense of calm and stillness.
Mhm.
What techniques do you use, if any, to convey tranquility in your photographs?
Great question. So I fly a lot for sunrise. I found there's not a lot of people out at that time. So you get when people see a drone in the air, sometimes they get a little bit nervous because they don't really know all the aspects about it. Or they're saying, "What are you doing with the drone in the air?" So I try to fly very early in the morning. One, because the colors are the best and there's not a lot of people, and because it's not that busy, so it allows you to get a little bit better to convey your story of relaxedness, if that's a proper word. Um, I consider it like cooking. If you're rushing and you're trying to cook something very fast, you're going to burn it. The same thing goes with photography and video and aerial and any medium as well as like painting. You have to take your time approach, see how you want to convey that message, and then hopefully it comes out. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Next, do you aim to connect with your audience on a personal level? How do you hope viewers will react emotionally to images like Sacred Heart,
Mhm.
with its juxtaposition of natural and urban landscapes?
Yeah. So Sacred Heart was a one of those photos that was not trial and error, but I was just lucky to get it with the colors. And the first time I flew in that area, what I didn't know is you can actually see the New York City skyline for the background. So it's the church itself. It's a cathedral that's in Newark, if anyone in the audience wants to know. So a lot of people don't know that you can actually see New York City in the background for it. And people who have lived there all their lives see my aerial photo and see it from another perspective that they've never seen before. Same thing with Treasure Island. Going back on that, I know a lot of some of the audiences I have in Point Pleasant and Brielle really took that to heart.
Yeah, I find that interesting because it's not like a perspective that your audience could get normally or by themselves.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
interesting.
So when
Um,
I showed a lot of people that photo, specifically Treasure Island, they thought it was a Caribbean island. They didn't know it was in New Jersey.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at your collection, there are themes of community and nature that seem to emerge. How do you choose the themes you want to explore in your work, or do they just, you know, um, come out of your work organically?
Again, it goes back to trial and error. So I always have a camera on me, whether it's a, traditional photo camera or a drone, a large one or a small one. Um, and the when it presents itself, the opportunity presents itself. Sometimes I just throw up the drone real quick and I see it and it's got that location. I'm like, oh, let me come back here with the better equipment to in early in the morning to get the colors in the sky. So sometimes the opportunity just presents itself, or I do a little bit of planning to see what areas I haven't really flown in or photographed before, especially during the season time of year. So some locations are better in the fall, some locations are better in the spring, some locations are better in the summer. One for the amount of people around, or it could be like the fall colors for the trees. So we're now just past the height of the season for the peak season for the leaves. So I have a couple more photos coming out with reservoirs and dams showing the leaves in the background. So it really depends on the season, the location, and when the opportunity presents itself. But I tried to also show some like local spots to that really you don't have that perspective from.
Great.
Mhm.
So my last question, as you continue to evolve as an artist, are there any specific locations or subjects you're particularly excited to photograph next? Do you have anything planned? How
Yeah.
do you envision your expanding your artistic exploration in the future?
Again, it goes all back to trial and error. Something I'm looking to do in the early winter is I'm making a trip to go up through Connecticut to take some photos of some lighthouses. Mainly because during like the summer months, because of the people, and because local towns have some ordinances against flying drones within certain timeframes of the year. So you have to pick again, you have to do the research and see when you're allowed to fly. But I have some really interesting locations coming up for some lighthouses in the next couple months, if the weather allows me to, because it tends to get a little bit windy in the winter. So
That's true. So do
yeah.
you generally stick more in the Northeast, or have you used this aerial photography method in other areas?
So I live in northern New Jersey, so I'm probably about 30 minutes away from New York City. Um, but I fly all throughout New Jersey. So northern, central, and southern. Some people will argue that there is no central New Jersey. I beg to differ, but a lot of my photographs are from central slash South Jersey with the beaches and the rivers and everything like that because the locations are great. Northern New Jersey is good in the fall, but during the summer and the spring, everything is better kind of in the south. Um, but more specifically, it depends. It's trial and error to see what you can get. So you're always constantly learning and you're constantly growing as a photographer, whether it be traditional or aerial. It really depends.
So that was my last question. Is there anything you want to add or talk about that we haven't touched on already?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything.
Okay, great. Well, Edward, thank you so much for being here with us today. We can't wait to see your work at our upcoming photography exhibition,
Yeah, definitely.
beginning in January to the end of March. So thank you again,
Mhm.
and have a great rest of your day.